Good morning and welcome to Liverpool Community Radio and Talkabout with myself, Brenda McGrath. Now, Talkabout is a monthly programme covering national and local issues affecting the community of Merseyside, together with music from local bands and musicians. Today's programme covers both problems and services for the disabled community. Liverpool Community Radio is an internet radio station staffed by volunteers who completed the LCR training course. Our website is www.l-c-r.co.uk, where you can listen to podcasts of all our shows. You can also tweet us at LCR. Now, in the studio this morning, we have Linda Wade from Dada Fest, a Liverpool arts organisation run by disabled people to empower the deaf and disabled and others to the world of arts. And later on, we have Councillor Pam Thomas, a disability rights activist, coming in to talk about hate crime towards disabled people. So some good stuff and some delicate stuff. But it's very important to understand that disabled people still suffer from hate crime, but there are wonderful organisations out there who are willing to help them. So let's just have some music, and this is Love is the Reason, which is by Joe Symes and the Loving Kind. Love is the Reason by Joe Symes, one of our wonderful local bands. Welcome back. It's Liverpool Community Radio and Brenda McGrath with Talkabout. And we're talking about disability this morning and disability rights, disability hate crime, and organisations helping disability. And in the studio, I have with me Anne Wade. I did call her Linda before. Sorry about that, Anne. From Dada Fest, who is Executive Director.
That's right, Brenda.
So tell us a little bit about Dada Fest. How did it start?
Okay, well, last year we were 30 years old, so we're a well-established organisation. We've been through a couple of phases in the organisation. But first of all, what is Dada Fest? That's a big question, isn't it? We are an arts organisation. We present excellence in the arts, and that's all types of art forms. So it might be visual arts, theatre, music, comedy, literature. And we are a world leader in our niche, and our niche is disability arts and deaf arts. And we aren't art for art's sake. We're an arts organisation the same as, other places in Liverpool, Tate, Everyman Playhouse, Unity Theatre. But we're not art for art's sake. We are there with an absolute purpose, and that is about promoting equality and social justice for disabled and for deaf people through our arts. We started 30-odd years ago now, and that was in the sort of post-Toxteth riots phase in Liverpool, where money was being invested in what were being called disenfranchised communities who were excluded, and disabled people were identified as one of those. So in our first phase, it was very much an intervention. It was about people coming and doing things, education, arts for disabled people. Quite soon after that, though, the disabled people and deaf people who were involved in the organisation really got together and said, no, this needs to be run by and for disabled and deaf people.
So who started it originally then? I mean, was it council or was it somebody, a local person, or, local interested person?
No,
you don't know, you're not sure.
It's in the sort of distant past for me.
Right,
I certainly
but
wasn't
it's
involved
established
there.
a long time.
Yeah, it was called Arts Integrated Merseyside, and I
Right,
suspect
okay.
it might have been council money, but it was money really about engaging communities. And that's what it did for the first phase, and that was fantastic because it gave us a base to build on. But then disabled people involved said, no, this needs to be led by disabled people and deaf people. The disabled people's movement were really getting into its stride then. There was a lot of campaigning prior to the Disability Discrimination Act coming in the mid-90s, and one of the sort of slogans of that disabled people's movement was nothing about us without us, and that was very much the spirit that took what was AIM and actually turned it into North West Disability Arts Forum, NWDAF, where it became much more a sort of collective of disabled and deaf artists supporting each other, making sure that, they got training, looking at how to progress their careers, producing work. It was a fantastic phase.
So how did people at that time, it might be different now, access that? I mean, was it heavily promoted in Liverpool or within the disabled community?
Well, I think in the same as, in the arts sector and in the voluntary sector.
Yes.
Then, as now, we do what we can. We get as much publicity as we can. The important thing about it was it always had the principle of being accessible to disabled people and to deaf people, and to meeting their support needs to be involved. That's always been a key principle and continues to be so. In about 2000, we sort of moved into the phase where we are now, and that was when our artistic director, Ruth Gould, joined the company. And, when somebody new steps into the lead, it's time to pause and have a rethink. Where are we? Where have we come from? And basically, we looked around and said, well, we're doing this training, we're supporting each other, some fantastic, acts were being launched out of it. But if you looked at mainstream theatre, mainstream telly, visual art, where were the disabled and the deaf people? They still weren't there. No. We weren't getting into that mainstream arts and venues. So then the decision was taken, well, if we aren't getting in there, well, we'll do our own thing. And Dada Fest was launched, and it was launched as a one-off festival. In 2001 was the first one. Loads of activities.
That's in Liverpool?
In Liverpool, always in Liverpool. We always feel it's really important that we come from Liverpool. We don't think Dada Fest would exist in the same way if we were anywhere else. There's something about the spirit of the city that is in us. Maybe it's a bit of feistiness, don't know, but it's there, and it's important that we're rooted here, especially as we are now.
And I would have
thought
you would get support as well from the council here.
Yes, we do.
You see,
we do.
Which may not happen in other places.
No, we do.
Quite the same way.
No, we get support from the council, and the council get it as well. Our council get the thing about the arts, how much it brings to people's lives. And, all the other arguments about the economic argument, it brings visitors in, they spend money.
Yeah.
But I think it's more than that. I think it's the social
And do
impact as
visitors, disabled visitors, and others, going to talk about that in a moment, but does it attract people from abroad and people?
Oh, yeah. We have international visitors. We have national visitors. In the festival, our most recent Dada Fest International, as it's called now, the festival was only meant to be a one-off, but it actually ran every year for 10 years. Then we moved to an every 2-year slot so that we could plan better. And last year, it ran from November through to January, and we've had over 500,000 people
but
come through.
The festival it isn't just as a festival like you go out and you parade, for a couple of days. It went on for a few months, didn't it?
Yeah.
So what? So it was October to January?
November through to January.
January. Now, that take place in different venues throughout the city?
Yeah. We're based in the Blue Coat in the centre.
School Lane, Liverpool
School
1.
Lane,
You're just behind...
Primark,
that's it, yeah.
Yeah, the lovely Blue Coat, one of the oldest buildings in the city. We're based there, and in partnership with the Blue Coat, we had a visual arts exhibition which ran from November 7th right the way through to January 15th, and then was packed up and shipped off to Grand Rapids in Michigan in the US.
Really?
So our works are over there, representing us over there.
So what sort of works will they be? I mean, obviously paintings, art, sculptures.
Yeah.
But are there sort of like street art and things like that? I mean, is it just art as we would think of art, or is there lots of components to that?
No, that's sort of the visual art side of it. We also have a whole performance programme which included theatre, poetry, music. We brought the brilliant staff Brenda over from Africa. They did our finale gig at the Philharmonic. They're just fantastic night. Those African vibes and the music, and they're very political about about disability in the same way as we are. Brilliant night. We had a young people's weekend, which was actually programmed by our young Dada Fest leaders, who are a brilliant group of young people who do loads of work with us. We had a family weekend, so people could come along to the Blue Coat and have a go at different things, try out art, get involved in storytelling, in poetry, in dance. So we have a whole performance programme as well, which, is a real mix. It's fantastic. It really has a great buzz around Dada Fest. It's joyous. So that's Dada Fest International, and in fact the festival became so sort of successful. That's where we took our name from that. We changed our name to Dada Fest because that's what people know us from.
Okay, let's take a little break. We'll have a little bit more music now. So this is let's see what I'm going to play now. Let's see. I know. I will play Queen by Connie Lush, who's a local blues singer. This is not uncopyrighted music, but she's waived her copyright. So here's Connie. Coming along now. that was our lovely Connie Lush, Liverpool blues singer. So we're back now. It's Liverpool Community Radio. It's Brenda McGrath and Talkabout, and we're here with Anne Wade from Dada Fest. Been talking about the aims and ambitions of what is a deaf and disabled organisation. So we were talking about how it came about, how Dada Fest came about, or how Dada is it called Dada Fest?
Dada Fest.
So even though it's the fest is what is the festival? Does that mean festival?
Yeah.
And how it's become international and lasts over a few months. So is that going to go on this year then in 2015?
Not this year. It'll be back on in 2016, the festival. But we do have an ongoing programme. We've just recently had Young Dada Fest at the Everyman Theatre in July, which was just fantastic. 100 young people coming along and performing. We were sold out. You couldn't get a ticket. It was really awful because people really wanted tickets and they just weren't any left.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
Wonderful.
It was fantastic.
And what sorts of disabilities are there? Every disability you could think of. I mean, is it people who've had accidents, people who've been born with, cerebral palsy, deaf, blind? Is the whole thing? Yeah,
well, our point of view on this is disability is a human issue. And we very much believe in the social model of disability. And what that means is it doesn't really look at, the individual and their impairments or their conditions. What it says is people are disabled by the barriers in society. So it's actually about removing those barriers. And those barriers can be physical. They can be attitudinal.
So somebody who was just very shy could fall into that, couldn't they?
Well, yeah, the social model is that if your needs aren't met because of, a particular whatever, then, you are disabled by society. And the important thing about that is it's a way of looking at it, that it's a change model, because too often historically, traditionally, whatever, and a lot in the media now, disabled people are seen as they're a problem or they're a burden or they're a what have you. And that's like, well, that person's got such and such and it'll never change. What can we do? What the social model says is actually, that person's just fine. Every single person will be touched by disability. We're all getting older. One of the things we say is you're either disabled now or you're just not disabled yet. We're all getting older.
Tell me that.
And if your needs are met, then you don't have to be disabled. It's just, you are who you are. We all live and we all change.
Well, it's a collective, isn't it? I mean, what are we talking about here? We're talking about in terms of wide, heterosexual, possibly male, fit society that we're all aspiring to. And it doesn't really exist, does it?
No,
which is what you're just saying.
Exactly, that's what we all try to get shoehorned into. And what we're saying is no, because the joy is in the difference, is in all the different people and all the different perspectives.
What always fascinates me about that concept is, from a purely commercial point of view, it's not selling goods, is it?
No.
Because if you're going to exclude all these people and they've got money or they've got money to spend, disposable income, you should provide a market for them.
Exactly.
So, it's sound common sense to make it inclusive, make it society inclusive.
Yeah, it is. And I think we were just beginning to start getting that around the Disability Discrimination Act. But the way things are going recently, disabled people, if it's whether it's on TV and it's sort of, benefits porn and people are discussed as though, they are either a scrounger or a burden, or whether it is hate crime, in the streets, people being shouted at.
To me, I mean, we discussed this before we came on air. I mean, I can sort of, I'm not saying I'm condoning this, I'm just sort of saying mentally I can get sort of homophobia and racist, because that's like tribal. It's probably always gone on. I mean, you've got to fight it. It's got to be stopped, and equality matters. But why would you be against disabled people who were suffering anyway? I can't, and I've never been able to get my head around that.
No, well, I think hate crime generally is hard to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I do think that this sort of prevalent thinking around disabled people as this sort of this burden or a draw on society. I mean, because people that we know who are, on the way to work or out for lunch and that will have things shouted at them like, get a job. And it's like, got one, thank you.
There was a photograph of somebody in the paper. There was a protest, I think, out of the house, outside in Westminster, Houses of Parliament, about the cuts. And they were in wheelchairs and everything. And there was a photograph, and I think it was actually a video of this city type, he's probably in his 50s, walking past, shouting, go away and die.
Well, exactly.
I mean, that is... Actually, it was F off and die, to be honest. But that's awful. I mean, OK, I can understand him saying, oh, you know, you get in the face, go away. But die? But I mean, it's horrific, isn't it, really, to say that to people?
I know. And it's in lots of different ways that thinking is out there, whether it is, you know... in the debate around euthanasia and, you know, control of deaths.
Well, I mean, I'm totally against, you know, the proposed changes to assisted dying, simply because, not just because I'm older, I'm very cynical. So you can see how that's going to progress. And I mean, it's not going to affect disabled people or older people or frail people. It can be anyone who is born differently, ultimately, or in Belgium, it's been extrapolated down to children.
Exactly.
And also in Belgium, they've waived some of the rights of people to give consent. Do we really want to go down that route?
Well, exactly. It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Indeed.
And it could end in terrible places. And then there are other things like, you know, when there are, I mean, really sad, and don't get me wrong, I have my total sympathy, but in cases where, you know, there are mothers who have, you know, ended maybe their own lives and disabled children as well, there's a groundswell of sympathy that another mother wouldn't get in it. And almost what it's saying is, oh, well, we can understand. There's such a burden.
Yeah.
You know, she's had to deal with such a burden.
That sort of attitude, I think it goes right across society. People are that busy. They're very self-centred now in comparison to that. I mean, the family, to a large extent, the larger family, has not broken down, but it's dispersed. So I think people just see it, oh, I can't do this. I haven't got time. Don't want to do it. At work and da-da-da-da. So where's the love in that?
Exactly. And I think in times of austerity, and I think in times where, you know, everybody's feeling threatened and insecure, then that is what then generates fear, generates hate. And
so
that is where hate crime comes from. Yeah.
Let's remove it. Because I mean, what they're asking for, as I said on the websites, you know, I mean, suicide's not illegal. You know, so what are you asking for?
Exactly.
Different if it's assisted suicide, that's different, because then you're involving somebody else. But what are we saying here? Don't do it if you want to, you know. No, they want it in law. And I think there's a big push behind that in that pressure group to do that for the very reasons we're talking about. So tell me before we go, because what have we got in the future planned, and how do people access this?
Okay, well, one of the best ways to access Dada Fest is through our website, which is dadafest.co.uk. We're also on Twitter and on Facebook. You just Google us and you'll find Dada Fest, DADAFEST. Things coming up, we've got quite a few exciting projects this year. One in particular, we did a read-through. We've been working with a local theatre company called Turf Love over the last couple of years to bring to the stage the story of Edward Rushton. And I think he kind of sums up everything that we do, because it was his 200th anniversary of his death last November. He was an amazing man. He was a champion for social change at the time when it was really needed. Liverpool man, born, apprenticed to the ships at the age of 11, as a lot of people were. Through a friendship with a freed African slave, he became aware of, you know, the issues around slavery. At the risk of being called a mutineer, he insisted on going down below decks on the slave ships he was working on to help the African
lots of social
slaves.
Justice in his makeup.
Loads of social justice. Caught a disease that was prevalent amongst the African community and became blind, was thrown off the ships into poverty, and that's where it all starts, really. After having done all of that, by the age of 17, he then became a businessman. He had a bookshop on I've forgotten the name. This Paradise Street. He employed local young people to read to him. He saw the plight of other blind people who weren't able to work or have any sort of, who were homeless. So he started to do provision for those. He was a poet.
Was he a philanthropist at that time then? He had the money to do that?
He wasn't rich at all. He literally was in poverty at the age of 17 and built himself up to a stage where he
found funding, obviously.
Well, he made his way. He
I'm talking about to
business.
help other people now.
Yeah. Well, what he then, on top of all of these things, so he was involved in the campaigns against slavery. He was a proto-feminist. He was against Irish oppression, and the reason why we really want to get his story out there as well, he's such a role model for the disabled community. Indeed. Because he also founded the Royal School for the Blind in Liverpool, one of the first ones in Europe at
so he's a real entrepreneur in his own way, but he didn't allow his disabilities to stand in the way, which is basically what you're saying, isn't it? So it's an aspirational and inspirational story.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic story, and above all of that, it's a love story.
So what's his name again?
Edward Rushton.
Because is a woman involved in this then?
His relationship with his wife was really interesting as well, and the play explores all of those things. And
are you going to put it together? Somebody scripting it at the moment?
Well, no, we're at the stage where we're ready to go to full production. We hope it's going to be next March.
And where will it be put on?
In a prestigious Liverpool theatre, let me put it that way.
We don't know yet. It's all under wraps.
It's all under wraps. We're ready to do a big reveal, but it'll be fantastic, and we'd love local people to come along and see it and really get on board with the story of this
when it takes off,
man.
we'll get in touch and we'll promote it on this show. And
brilliant.
We'll
fantastic.
We'll bring some leaflets in and some flyers as well.
Fantastic.
So let me just say this. We're thinking about the hate crime that we were talking about before. I know this on your website. You have got these are agencies that you can go to if you're experiencing any problems, which is Voice UK, which is 0808 802 8686, and Crime Stoppers will always get involved. 0800 555 111. So there's no need to put up with any sort of abuse, either verbal, pressurised, physical, or whatever. Just ring those numbers and if you are sitting out there and you think I need a bit of a hand up or a help or want to get involved and you feel disabled in any way, and it can be minor or major, get in touch with Dada Fest and they will help you with that to become more integrated in the community. So thanks for coming along, Anne. I'm going to play another piece of a track now, but it's wonderful to find out. I have seen it promoted a lot, and let us know when your play comes on and anything else that you want to promote. So this is Joe Bywater. Oh no, It Never Rains in Mossley Hill by the Ragamuffins. So welcome back. This is Brenda McGrath with Talkabout on Liverpool Community Radio. So on to our next guest, who is Councillor Pam Thomas. Welcome, Pam. Now, Pam is a disability rights activist, and she's going to talk to us about how Liverpool could or maybe is or is not a disability-friendly city, and a little bit about hate crime. Now, Pam has been a Liverpool City Councillor from 2010, freelance research and consultant disability, equality and independent living. And her wisdom comes from a unique combination of personal experience of disability and academic qualifications and employment in the public and third sector. She's also an author as well of several books, combined with other people, on disablement and equality. So, Pam, have I got that right?
I think so, yeah. You've covered everything there, I think.
So, because you are... Could you tell us just a little bit about your background? I mean, you've had a disability from birth.
Well, I was from a very young age, from being a toddler. And when I went to school, I was a disabled child. I spent a lot of time in Alder Hey. So it's great to see the new development there. In those days, there were no parents visiting, so it's great to see that's changed. Well, they could come for half an hour, but certainly little brothers and sisters didn't come in, so there's great changes there. Yes, and since about 15 years ago, I use a wheelchair for getting out and about.
So before that, you were able to walk around? And
I could walk, but not very far, and certainly not very fast.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, you're and then you went on, you're taking a PhD, so you're actually Dr. Pam Thomas, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then was elected to the local city council. So you must have an interest in disability as far as Liverpool City Council goes about treating or dealing with disabled people.
Yes, of course. But I bring it in across the different issues. It's a cross-cutting theme. So rather than having things separately dealt with as disability issues, I bring it into issues of maybe the highways, or whether it's education or employment. So look at what are the disability issues in each of those areas.
So when anything's being mooted or proposed, you'll then put your two penny worth in about how it should apply to disabled people.
If it gets a chance, yes.
How would you define disability?
Well, disability is the way that society excludes people with certain conditions, because society generally doesn't take us into account, doesn't think about how things are going to affect us. So, for example, if we look at housing, there are minimum standards for about the last 20 years maybe of new housing not having front door steps. So that's made a big difference to people. There are best practice standards called lifetime home standards, which takes into account other features that house builders can include. So that would mean making sure there's plumbing downstairs, so that if in the future somebody needs a shower fitting, it's easy to do. And things like making sure that the walls are strong enough to take a second handrail on the stairs, or a stair lift, or grab rails around.
So that's sort of preemptive, isn't it? That's saying that people may become disabled or get older.
And we do, don't we?
But I mean, that's very interesting. So it's not just about people who are already disabled, is it? It's
not
thinking
at
of
all.
the future.
Nobody knows if there will be a disabled person tomorrow. So people could go and buy a new house thinking it's going to be fine for them, and one of the members of the family may become ill, and may, even if it's only short term, even with a broken leg or something like that, you can find that the house is not really suitable to live in. But we can't have, we've had some difficulty with lifetime home standards. I put a motion to council in 2011 to say all new homes would be built to lifetime home standards, and most of the developers have done that.
So that would go into the tendering proposals?
Well, this is private development, because the council doesn't have their own housing. Social housing have to do it anyway.
Right.
So it's private developers.
So how did they... So that was something you did as outside the council?
No, that's as a council. I put that to council, and it was agreed and written into the planning.
So how can you
document.
implement that? I mean, how can you make them do it?
It's called supplementary planning guidance.
Oh, right, okay.
And
so
there are other things in there as well. And most housing developers will do that. Occasionally we'll get some who say, they can't for one reason or another. But when we have got lifetime home standards, that then takes the pressure off things like adult social care and hospitals, because sometimes people can't go home because their home is not accessible. So they're stuck in hospital. That's a cost to the public purse. If we have to put in costly adaptations, that's a cost. If the house is built in the first place, not with the adaptations, but flexible.
Yes, so they can be put in.
So they can, so it doesn't stop it. Some houses are so flimsy you just cannot put the adaptations in. They're just too flimsy.
Now, Anne Wade, who we had in just before from Dada Fest, which is a deaf and disabled organisation, she said that in her view, disability isn't what people necessarily think of, somebody like yourself, a wheelchair user, or maybe somebody who's been in an accident and so forth. But it could be anybody who just has reduced mobility and feels excluded from things because of that. Is that how Liverpool City Council see it, do you think?
It is officially, because one of the other things that I did, in fact I did it many, many years ago, but I've reaffirmed it in about 2011 and again a month or so ago, to reaffirm the social model of disability, which is exactly what Anne was saying, is that it's the way that society is organised that excludes us. So the example I used of housing, you can apply that kind of thing to various areas. So say for employment, for example, you may get employers who are prejudiced against disabled people. They make assumptions that disabled people can't hold down a job. The workplace may be inflexible, and that could be around the hours. When it's unnecessary for set hours, they could be more flexible. Or it could be physical features, say for people who are hard of hearing or deaf. They may need to sit in a certain position so that they can take best use of the acoustics. Similarly for people with visual impairment. So it can cover a whole range of people who may not traditionally be thought of as disabled people. But if they're facing that kind of barrier, then under the social model of disability, they would be considered disabled. And officially, that's what the City Council does.
Well, I'm going to say to you, thinking now about Liverpool as a city which is disablement friendly or disability friendly, irrespective of what the council's doing, we're not holding them to task here, how friendly do you think Liverpool is to disabled people?
I think it varies depending on where you're going, what you want to do. I generally say the more active you are, the more barriers you face, and that's certainly true for me. So if I use myself as an example, Brenda, I'm very active out and about and go to places. And sometimes it's the social networking side of it. So any organisation you're involved in, there's the social aspects of it where you get together and you go out and you might say, let's all go out for a drink. Well, where are we going to go? Now, actually trying to find somewhere.
It is. I know when we've organised things, or tried to organise things between us, because we see each other socially, I know there's a certain restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, which is up a lot of stairs, and we just can't go there.
That's right.
We just can't go there. And I remember saying to you, and you looked at me with horror, I don't think you've ever spoken to me since then properly about it, is I said, couldn't someone carry you up the stairs? That's how naive I was, to think that would be a solution. But a lot of people would think that, wouldn't they?
Oh, yes, I still get offered to be carried, which is completely beside the point. Apart from the health and safety issues, we should be looking at equality of access. So, and what is annoying is when buildings are refurbished, they're not actually covered by any legislation to make themselves accessible, and in some cases it's probably not going to be possible.
No.
But some of the refurbishments, there's maybe one step to get in when it could have just been simply sloped. To make sure that disabled people.
Well, I often think to myself, because I have a problem getting them downstairs now because I've got stiff knees. But I often think, for instance, when we went to Lowlands, which is a big house in Liverpool, not far from where we live, there was like 1 million steps to get up. I mean, I know there's a lift there now, but when you think about it, when it was built, there mustn't have been any disabled people. How did people get in and out? There must be about 10 or 12 really steep steps to get up into that house on both sides of it. Were people carried up there?
No, they were in institutions.
Oh, people! Why didn't I think of that?
They were in the workhouses.
It must have been in it. They never thought, did they? About I see. So they abandoned them. Oh well, that's going to be interesting to talk about when we come back after the break, because we're going to talk a little bit about hate crime, which has probably come on after the institutions closed. So what we're going to play here is, now this will interest you, Pam. This is another Liverpool City Councillor, John Prince, who plays the pianos in town when we have what's called Tinkle the Ivories, which is in Liverpool 1 for a couple of months of the year. And he's also a pianist. So he sent me some music along, which is a recording of what he plays. So let's just put on track 1. That was our lovely John Prince, the councillor for Yew Tree, playing the Ivories on Clayton Square last year. So Pam, going on now from that, so we just had a chatting there when we were listening to the music, talking about how did people cope years ago, because we see houses in Liverpool which have huge steps and stairs, and didn't they think about it then? Because they were always locked up in institutions. So, but what that leads me to say to you is, if there was that thought then, is it those sorts of thoughts that lead to hate crime today against disabled people?
I think it's certainly linked, because there is still some level of some people being repulsed by disabled people. They don't like the way we appear, whether it's physical features or the way we move can be quite, some people actually find that quite repulsive. And I'm not justifying it, I'm just saying that that's what happens. And also because people have been separated and segregated either in institutions or because we cannot physically take part, we're not part of social networking, we don't always get into those networks and get to be known in that way. We're seen as other and outsiders. So there'll be some element of that. The other thing more recently, although it has happened in the past as well, is the stuff, the media portrayal of disabled people as benefit scroungers, getting something for nothing. If you tried a bit harder, you could actually be equal to other people and go out and get a job, and some people do get a job. I've always worked, but I've always had to be quite careful about where I work, to make sure that I'm in the kind of employment that, first of all, I can do, and that there's some flexibility to ensure I can do the whole job. And also, even for those disabled people in work, there can be resentment in the workplace, because you may need, for example, the only thing I need for being a counsellor is somewhere to park, because I have a whole load of problems if I can't park the car. I don't have any problems at all. I've never experienced that kind of resentment, but I know from reports that other people do. People may need particular types of equipment, or say somebody's got a visual impairment, they need to sit by the window, and somebody else in the workplace says, well, I want to sit by the window, why should they be sitting by the window?
But don't they think, well, they've got a problem and therefore I should be a bit more gracious about it? I mean,
well, they obviously don't.
But most where do these people come from?
Well, I don't know, but most people are gracious, and the thing that I get most of all is people actually say to me, can I do anything to help you?
Yes, indeed.
And that's hardly a day goes by when I'm out and about.
I know.
Or if people have say when I'm out in the wheelchair and people have been in my way, and I'll say, excuse me please, and they can't apologise enough, probably a little bit too much sometimes, but I say it's okay, it's not a problem. So you do get that mixture, and like with any crime, it's a minority of people who will commit crimes. But more recently there's been some research by a woman called Catherine Quarmby. She's done a lot of research around disability hate crime, and she's been looking at motivation. What motivates people, and there has been a rise in resentments against people claiming welfare benefits, so that when people have been attacked in some way, they've been called scroungers.
But isn't it true that, or is it not true, that payments for disability is being transferred to local authorities shortly?
Some of it is. That's the Independent Living Fund.
How will that affect disabled people?
For those people on it, it's devastating, because that made the difference between people having to go into institutions, so we're going backwards, between that and them living independent lives in their own homes and probably holding down a job.
But surely institutions are much more expensive to run. That's one of the reasons they were closed down.
Well, that's one of the reasons, yes. They're very expensive. They are very expensive. So the money's being transferred to local authorities, but it's not being ring-fenced for one thing. That's bad. Yeah, and the other thing is the money's still getting cut for social care. In Liverpool, the money is, the people who are on Independent Living Fund will still be getting the same amount at the moment, but how long Liverpool can maintain that is uncertain at the moment, because the funding is getting further cuts.
So how are people, I mean, I know this is a facile question, because I mean there's people not disabled who are having terrible times and going to food banks and that. How are people supposed to manage?
I've no idea. And people aren't managing, aren't they?
No, they're not managing.
The other thing we've picked up in reports is the number of people who actually have committed suicide or have have died as a result of their conditions when they've had benefit cuts or they've been threatened with benefit cuts. And the government have been asked to produce a report on this, but they're doing their utmost not to do it. They're saying, the statistics aren't ready.
What they want really is they want to drive the costs down by making councils, as they think, more streamlined and more efficient so that they can still maintain the budgets. That's their story, isn't it? That's a government story.
We've done all the streamlining many years ago. That's been done.
Or I would like an American model, really. They want sort of charities or charitable institutions to take up the slack. That's what they want. Or families to do it.
But charities do a lot of good work, and they should be there for extras. Because it's like going back to a Dickens novel. That people are reliant on charity for basic living, such as the food banks. They've been a very good thing as a safety net, but now it's as if they're supposed to go there as a first port of call.
Well, that's what they're talking about, isn't it? And then ultimately, I suppose they're hoping that the economy improves, people get more pay. They're going to have to take insurance out. I mean, we're going totally to the American model. But what happens to the people at the bottom? People like disabled people or older people who haven't got... I mean, OK, they say that the pension's restricted, is protected. The pension's only like £139 a week, or 140, we'll say, for argument's sake. So, I mean, that's not an awful lot if you haven't got a private pension. So you're going to get the workhouse mentality coming back here.
Well, exactly, and that's why I said it is like going back to a Dickens novel.
It is, yeah.
And all those things, in reading those novels, we say that it's just horrific the way things were. And yet that kind of thing is happening.
At what point will people resist this? I mean, surely what are we going to see? Disabled people begging on the streets. I mean that's what they do in other countries. It happens.
Well, we already do, because when we see homeless people out, there's a high proportion of those homeless people who are genuinely homeless and, I hate the word, but vulnerable, have mental health issues. There's a high proportion. So we don't know whether people are out there because they've got mental health issues, or if they get mental health issues because of the situation that they find themselves in. But overall statistics show that genuinely homeless people, that there are a high proportion of disabled people amongst them.
OK, let's take another little break here. So I'm just going to play you now Love is the Reason by Joe Symes again. So let's just have a listen to this. That was the lovely Joe Symes, local musician with Love is the Reason. And we're back here, Liverpool Community Radio, with Councillor Pam Thomas talking about disability and the problems surrounding that. So Pam, we just got a couple of minutes left. So tell us, in sort of utopia, how would it be for disabled people from birth, really, right the way through? What would happen there? How would it be?
Well, it would be that we could live our lives on equal terms with other people, and not forever having to explain why we need things doing this way or that way, not having to justify why we need things doing a certain way.
Accessibility to buildings.
Well, I mean, that's because that's an obvious one, and a lot of new buildings are accessible. Public buildings will tend to be so. But whenever I am asked to go somewhere, if I haven't been before, I always have to check it out.
Well, I'm a little bit like that, because if someone says to me, we'll go out tomorrow, I go, where are we going? How far is it to walk?
Exactly.
You know, because if I'm doing like a quarter of a mile or something, it's going to take it out of me. And then you think, how many steps are there to go?
Right.
Don't mind 5 to 10 if it's 30.
Exactly.
I can be able to do that. So, I mean, I'm in your mindset now, and that's just an age thing.
Yes.
So we all get there at some stage.
Well,
you know,
yes,
I mean,
it's
with
true.
me, it's just a bit of stiffness in the knees. Some people, it's heart trouble.
Yeah.
So,
Or breathing is another
or
one.
breathing, you know. So you can't just go out, and I've said this before to other people who've been on the show when they've been, you know, talking about, you know, facilities. Why is there no seating areas? And they go, oh, because you're just thinking of young people.
That's
you're not
right.
thinking of older people, you know. So listen, thanks for coming in. And we've just got less than a minute left. So it's good to see that things are happening, and it's great to see the work that you're doing. And I know that you've worked very hard, and Pam's a hero of mine, because, you know, she's led a very full life and got 2 lovely young men, children. And it's a great credit to you what you've done, you
Thank
know,
you, Brenda.
considering the, you know, the problems that you've had, you know, from when you were quite young. So we're just going to sign out with Scottish Guitar Quartet with See You in Seattle. See you next time. This is Brenda McGrath from Liverpool Community Radio.